G'day. My name's Alan Gamble. Welcome to another episode of Aussie Box Office Charts. Weekend 48. We are on the home stretch to the end of the year, and we had a battle for the top position this week. Let's dive in. Ending up at number one was Zootopia 2, edging out Wicked for Good in its second week of release. Zootopia 2 opened with $5.7 million, taking top spot. Fairly close battle, and we'll compare that to the original Zootopia from 2016 after the top 10. Wicked for Good drops down to number 2 with a fairly steep 56% drop in its second week of release, but bringing in another $5.1 million for a current total of $21.1 million after 2 weeks. That is really impressive. We will check in on the musical totals chart after the top 10 so we can see how it stacks after 2 weeks and how far it's got to go before it becomes, or has a chance at becoming, the highest grossing musical of all time. At number 3 we have Now You See Me, Now You Don't with another $700,000, its third week in release, dropping 44% for a current total of just over $5 million. At number 4 we have The Running Man with another $300,000, dropping 58% in its third week of release for a current total of $3.1 million. And rounding out the top 5 is Predator Badlands with $290,000, dropping 52% in its fourth week of release for a current total of $5.7 million. Now, there have been some mixed reports of those 4 and 5, with some sources having them swapped and others having them the way I've got them there. So I've gone with them with The Running Man at 4 and Predator Badlands at 5, but you may see the difference is within hundreds of dollars. So any mixed conversion rate when they've done, Australian dollars to US dollars can alter who gets 4 and 5 because they are so close this week. Moving on to 6 through 10. At number 6 we have Dead of Winter. That opens in 6th with $157,000 for a current total of $245,000. At number 7 we have Tere, Ishk, Mine, a Hindi language romance movie out of India. At number 8 we have Echo, a Malayalam language mystery drama also out of India, so big week for Indian film this week. At number 9 we have Regretting You with another $75,000, its sixth week in release, dropping 62% for a current total of $6.8 million. While it's a good number for a movie like that, it is well off the pace of what It Ends With Us brought in last year, which was about $22 to $25 million if I remember correctly. And rounding out the top 10 we have NT Live, The Fifth Step, the latest of the National Theatre Live shows, this one featuring Martin Freeman and Jack Lowden. So with no updates to the top 5 openers of the year, Zootopia 2 did open well at $5.7 million. It's around number 9 highest opening of all time, and that's not in the top 5. But looking at Zootopia compared to Zootopia 2, we have a clear improvement. Is this going to be more front-loaded? We'll have to find out as weeks go on. But in 2016, Zootopia opened to $4.9 million, and Zootopia 2 just opened to 5.7. That's a good sign. Not too much else to say about that one, so let's shove over to the musicals. So this is similar to the chart we looked at last week, except this is all of those movies and their total Australian domestic box office. So some of these ones that opened really, really low actually ended up doing really, really well. The Greatest Showman is a keen example of that in 2017. But at number 2, there is Wicked from 2024 with its $48 million. And if we shimmy down the order, Wicked for Good, after just 2 weeks, is right down there with $21.1 million, already passing some unfortunate flops like In the Heights and West Side Story from 2021, some of the really old classics from like Evita and Phantom of the Opera in 97 and 2004, to some moderate successes. Hairspray, Chicago with $19 million. The movie I genuinely forgot existed, Mary Poppins Returns in 2019, completely forgot that ever happened. But after 2 weeks of release, it's already on par and has beaten La La Land from 2017 And it's hot on the heels, and by next week it will have passed Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, and The Little Mermaid, quite possibly Moana as well, the original Moana from 2016. So it's doing quite well, but it had a harder drop-off compared to Wicked Part 1. So I am keeping a track on how much it does each weekend, and we will see maybe next week how it's tracking compared to Wicked on a week-by-week basis. Because this is a really interesting one. It started higher, it's now lost most of that lead. So by next week, is it even going to have a lead? Or is it going to be behind where Wicked was in its third week of release? We'll soon find out next week. Speaking of $21.1 million with Wicked for Good, our 2025 top 10 at the Australian box office, so the top 10 of all movies released in 2025, has changed. We have an update. The first 7 are exactly the same as they have been for the last few months, but at number 8, after 2 weeks of release, Wicked for Good enters the charts with its $21.1 million, which knocks down Fantastic Four: The First Steps at $17.9 million. Paddington in Peru goes down to number 10 at $17.8 million. And Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy is out of the top 10. That has been there since January. So, sorry Bridget Jones, you are out of the top 10 for 2025. Paddington, I have some bad news of what might be coming your way as well, but that is what the top 10 currently looks like. Moving on to what's upcoming this week, 4th of December. In wide release, we have Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the sequel to the 2023 surprise smash hit, once again directed by Emma Tammy and starring Josh Hutcherson, Elizabeth Lally, Piper Rubio, and the ever-delightful Matthew Lillard. We also have Eternity, a new romantic comedy directed by David Fran and starring Elizabeth Olsen, Miles Teller, and Callum Turner. And finally, in wide release, as far as I can tell, we have Nuremberg, a historical war drama about the Nuremberg trials, directed by James Vanderbilt and starring Russell Crowe, Rami Malek, and Michael Shannon. In limited release, so check your smaller and indie cinemas, we have Merrily We Roll Along, a comedy musical directed by Maria Friedman. We also have the latest anime theatrical release, Jujutsu Kaisen Execution. Can it follow on as strong as Demon Slayer and Chainsaw Man? Probably not. It's considered a smaller anime, but if anime is your jam, you're having a good year. And finally, we have Twiggy, a documentary on Twiggy, the UK model from the 1960s, directed by Sadie Frost. Over on streaming, we have The Abandons, the latest series from Kurt Stutter, this time a Western drama starring Lena Headey and Gillian Anderson. You can catch this one on Netflix from December 4th. We also have Spartacus, House of Ashur, the latest entry in the Spartacus franchise from creator Stephen S. DeKnight. This one starring Nick E. Tarablay, Graham McTavish, who is a very giant man, and Tanika Davis. You can catch this one on Stan from December 5th. And finally, we have Jay Kelly. The Netflix movie gets its Netflix release after its short 2-week theatrical window, as has been fairly commonplace for them this year. This one is directed by Noah Baumbach, starring Adam Sandler and George Clooney, and can be caught on Netflix on December 5th. Now, there was going to be another series called The Hunt, releasing on December 3rd on Apple TV+, but it was pulled from release by Apple at the last minute due to some serious plagiarism accusations or claims. So a bit of a whoopsie on that one. So no The Hunt for now at least. If it comes back on the release schedule, I'll let you guys know about it. So, only 4 movies for this week's challenge due to Biff being on and seeing a lot of movies with that. But let's look at what I did watch. First up was from earlier this year with Fight or Flight, directed by James Madigan and starring Josh Hartnett, Charintha Chandran, and Katie Sackhoff. giving us a very simple story of a mercenary trying to track a target on a plane when an urgent request comes through. Now, this movie, I had heard some mixed, middling reviews and average scores, but I had an absolute blast with this one. I was not expecting such a mega, hyper-violent action movie from it. Some action movies get their excitement from tension, from the gritty realism, and others, like this one, have chainsaws. You should know if this one will be your jam from that statement alone. Next up was another 2025 catch-up movie with Flight Risk, directed by Trash of the Earth, Mel Gibson, and starring Mark Wahlberg, Michelle Dockery, and Topher Grace. Another fairly simple story for this one, of a US Marshal escorting a government witness to a trial after he's accused of getting involved with a mob boss. And I can't sugarcoat this one. This movie is pretty terrible. Whoever wrote it has never flown a plane before, I can guarantee, nor do they understand basic physics of how planes actually fly. An absolutely terrible movie with a pretty bad bald cap on Mark Wahlberg that I noticed in several scenes. And if I'm noticing it, that's really bad because it's not normally a thing I notice. And I normally enjoy bottle movies, like single location movies, which this one plays out as, but it didn't even work for me, and that's saying something. Moving on from that trash pile was Shadow in the Clouds from 2021, directed by Roseanne Liang, and starring Chloe Grace Moretz, Nick Robinson, and Callan Mulvey. A World War II New Zealand-based movie, which is fairly uncommon, where a woman boards an aircraft at the last minute with a secret passage and top secret orders. A rare World War II movie in the sense that we don't see many featuring New Zealand, but it was a pretty solid war horror thriller that does some good tension building and lets loose and has a bit of fun towards the end. Can't complain, but it won't be for everyone. Finally was a 2025 rewatch, as sometimes I like to recap movies from earlier in the year before I start making my end of the year lists. And for this time, it was for F1 the Movie, directed by Joseph Kosinski, starring Brad Pitt, Damson Idris, and Javier Bardem. Racing legend Sonny Hayes is coaxed out of retirement to lead a struggling F1 team. And I love this one on first watch, and I still had a lot of fun with it on second viewing. But it did lose a lot of the impact watching it at home compared to at the cinema. While all the awesome visuals and sound were still there, and you still had the shit yeah moments, it was missing the big screen and sound. It did take a lot away. Still a solid movie, but one that is better at the cinema. For this week's challenge, the theme is guests and visitors. So things like people visiting someone or invading someone, things like Arrival or Daddy's Home. We have Companion. Get Out is the big example. Happiest Season. Eyes Wide Shut. We've got a lot of examples, but let's jump over to my shortlist, which consists of a few things like American Werewolf in Paris and Just Visiting. I Don't Understand You, and maybe Riff Raff. There's a few I'm not sure if they'll meet, so we're going to have to play it by ear, but Happiest Season is on there, so we'll see how we go. But that is it for me this week. Tune in next week where we will be looking at the opening of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Can it give another boost to the Aussie box office? Is it going to be a smash hit like the original was? We'll find out. I'll probably be seeing either Eternity or Nuremberg, depending on times and stuff like that, and how much I have on the weekend. But I'll at least be catching one of them, so we'll see how we go. But yeah, that's it for me. Tune in next week where we'll be looking at week by week of Wicked Part 2, comparing week 1 to week 2 to weekend 3. Can't wait to see how that looks and how that continues to shape up. But yeah, have a good one. Watch more movies. Bye.